everybody. It's Chris Eads, known online as Wootini, here with another Gay Gamer video podcast. There was no episode last week because, as I posted to Twitter, I went to FlameCon. I have not gone to FlameCon since before COVID, but I had been considering it this year. I didn't go last year, but this year I was considering it because they do have really strong COVID policies and everyone needs to wear a mask the whole time. So I was like, okay, that's helpful. But the reason that I really went this year is because I was invited to speak on a panel, remembering Rachel Pollack, which I did tell him that I only worked with Rachel for a little bit in the mid-90s. I was the assistant editor on The New Gods at DC Comics, which she co-wrote and then wrote solo. It was maybe like 6 to 8 months, and I don't remember much. And he was like, no, it's fine, just come and contribute what you can. And I was like, okay. So I did make a point of reaching out to Rob, the editor who I worked for, because he would remember better. And I said, please give me any anecdotes or stories or information that you might have that I can share during the panel for people, just so I have something to contribute. So there was no episode last week, so I've got a bit to cover this week, so I'm going to try to talk fast anyway. I'm going to try to talk more briefly, which is a little more tricky for me, so that this doesn't end up being like a super long episode. So let's just jump right in. I went to the movies, obviously. Previous week, I went to see Talk to Me, which is the new horror movie from A24. And it was actually very good. It was scary and creepy and gruesome and shocking, and the performances are great. The lead actress carries the movie. I mean, she has to. It's basically her story, and she carries it very well. The problem that I had with it's a very good movie, but I went into it, I avoided reading reviews because I wanted to avoid spoilers, but I knew that it was getting hyped up as the next big horror classic, and that's different from when I went to see Hereditary on like opening night before there was any hype and was blown away. Here there was no way it was going to live up to the hype. So it ended up feeling like a bit of a letdown, but I don't actually think it was a bad movie. It's actually a good movie, but everyone was like, oh, it's the next big thing. And I saw it and I was like, okay, that was good, but it wasn't the next big thing. But your mileage may vary. I don't know. So recommended. And then this weekend, I went to see Blue Beetle in IMAX. For the 1 week, it's going to be in IMAX. Because there's so many movies coming out and they all seem to be in IMAX, so they just rotate every week. Except for Oppenheimer, which is still playing at Lincoln Square in 70mm IMAX. I don't know how long that's going to go on, but it's crazy. But anyway, Blue Beetle was actually quite a bit of fun. It suffers from the typical superhero origin pacing issues where it takes like a half an hour before he even gets the powers, and then it's like another hour before he figures out how to really use them, and then you have your exciting CGI finale. But one thing that this movie did that I appreciated was A, it had a great sense of humor, and B, it was centered around family. So while there's a lot of non-superhero action in the beginning, it takes that time to, establish the family and the themes of family that I liked, and establishes the characters so that later when there's like more emotional moments, they work because they've established characters and they're not just caricatures, Jaime is a great lead, cute, charming, funny, you root for him. Susan Sarandon, I thought was completely miscast, but then sometimes she wasn't. Like, it felt weird to have Susan Sarandon as the villain in a superhero movie, but she alternates between feeling completely out of place and then also being like this super horrible, heartless villain that you hate so much. So I guess credit to her for her acting, for actually managing to pull it off, sort of. Um, but yeah, I hope that it does well so that we can maybe get a sequel and it's not just tossed aside like all the other DC stuff for the new DC cinematic universe that James Gunn is creating. We'll see. I don't know. But yeah, it was fun and I liked it. As for games, the previous week I actually spent a lot of time playing Knights of the Old Republic 2 on my Switch, both portably and on the TV. And I actually made some decent progress in it, even though I feel like I am still just at the very beginning of this game and there's so much more to do. And I feel like I've already been playing it forever. I don't know how long this game is, but it feels very, very, very long because I feel like I've only just started to get to the like real meat of the plot, like meeting this other Jedi and like finding out about his past and everything. It's like it's crazy, but and I feel like I've already been playing it for like 30-40 hours and I've only just now started to get into the plot. But I also got a little frustrated because there was this one section that ended in this big boss fight against this giant like tank robot thing that I could barely make a dent in, and I'm like, what am I not doing? What am I not getting? And I looked online, and unfortunately the KOTOR2 walkthroughs are a little sparse online because it's an old game. But there's enough out there. I was able to find out people were like, oh, just like place a bunch of mines so when you turn on the reactor and that door opens and the tank robot comes out, it'll blow up on the mines. And that should either kill it or take most of its health away anyway. And I said, oh, okay. So I reloaded an old save and then placed all these mines and then redid that whole section, turned on the generator and came back, and the damned thing had only blown up like 2 mines. The rest of them were all there, and I'm like, how did you get around all those mines? I literally put them on either side of the door in all different spacings. There were like a half a dozen mines that he just suddenly like missed somehow, and I was like, ugh. So because I'm discovering that the AI in this game is not great. Like the player characters, the NPCs, your companions, they'll like stand outside in the hallway and then you have to like manually get them to come into the room to start fighting with you, or else you're on your own. And like in this case, like one of them started shooting at the tank, but was hitting these giant boxes that he was behind, and I'm just like, you have to come around the boxes or you're not going to hit anything except boxes, you idiot. But then the AI on the robot was terrible because I couldn't lure him around the corner into the mines. Although then again, maybe that means that his AI is good because he's like, I'm not walking into those mines. You come to me and I'll just shoot you down. I did eventually get past him and then got very concerned because the very next fight, after the cutscene, you encounter 3 hunter-killer droids. That was a tough fight. I died like 3 or 4 times, and eventually I defeated all 3 of them and managed to continue with the story. Then there's like a really long story section, which I think I'm sort of like wrapping up now. But it makes me worried that like the combat is getting more difficult, and I'm like, I might have to lower difficulty on the game to easy because it's getting tricky, and like the companion characters aren't really helpful in a battle because they just like run into the fray and get themselves killed constantly. And I have to like keep manually controlling them to try to like help them turn on their shields and stuff to keep them alive a little bit longer. And I just feel like the combat is starting to get a little more difficult, and like it's not working anymore, and I'm afraid that I'm going to start getting frustrated. But it'll be a little while before I figure out whether or not that's happening, because I did also play another game this past week. I was reading this new book that I got from Tashin about fantasy art, and there was some pictures of Mobius art, and that reminded me of that game that I mentioned in an episode or 2 like months ago called Sable. And I'd been intrigued by it, and it came out on PS5, and I was like, ooh, Because I remember when it came out on PC, I was like, oh, that looks cool. Oh, it's just PC, never mind. It was like PC and Xbox, and I was like, oh, well, never mind. But then it eventually came to PS5, and I was like, oh. But I didn't get it. But I was like, let me just look it up. And it turns out that it's on sale for half off in a PlayStation Plus sale for like one more day. There was like one more day to go in the sale. I was like, oh. So I snatched it up for $12.50, and I started playing it. And it's exactly what I wanted it to be. The premise is basically you're this young girl who leaves her nomadic tribe to journey around the desert on what's called a gliding. That's like this, coming of age tradition for their people. And you basically travel around and you explore different places and you meet new people and you basically do all these different quests for people. And I'm gathering that, you're doing all these favors and stuff, and you're supposed to like figure out what you want to do with your life at the end of the game. I'm assuming that's your final decision is, because you're meeting like, merchants and mechanics and guards and whatever. So you're collecting badges and you'll get masks for them. And then at the end, I suppose you're supposed to put on the mask of the profession that you want to pursue in life. But we'll see. I don't know. I'm just assuming. It's still early yet. Although I don't think the game is very long, so I don't think it's going to take that long to play because it's an indie game. But it is kind of like this small open world, and you just sort of sail around on your glider, which alternates between controlling smooth like butter and bouncing around like a crazy person. So, and there's no like the main quest is to just explore. So it's basically just a bunch of side quests and errands and helping people out. And like you talk to somebody, they're like, oh, hey, can you go get this for me? And you go do it. And they're like, hey, I'm going over here, meet me there. And that, and so it's a lot of exploring, and there's like climbing and some platforming, but it's not really platforming. It's more like puzzle platforming. So it's okay for me. I don't mind it. Because it's like you're in a room and you're like, okay, how do I get up there? Can I get over here? Okay, if I move this over here and I can jump from up here, and you have like the ability to kind of glide a little so that you can like float to further away platforms. And it's like trying to figure out like, okay, can I climb that? Can I glide to there? How can I get to this location? And there's like a puzzle aspect to it that I find very appealing. And then I also it's just super chill and gorgeous. Like the soundtrack is amazing. From Japanese Breakfast, it's so good. And it's very chill. And the graphics are like a Mobius illustration come to life, which I love. And it's very chill. You're just sort of exploring, and you're like, oh, what's over here? Oh, what's that tower? Let me climb to the top and see what's there, and just like discovering things. It's sometimes not chill, like when you're platforming and you're like, can I make that? And you get a little, but mostly it's chill. And so I'm very much enjoying that one. It's not going to hold me over till October, but it'll hold me over. And then maybe I'll go back to KOTOR, and then that'll hold me over till October or longer, because it does seem a very long game. And I hope this wasn't too long, and I will stop now and see you next time, where I'll have some more to talk about Sable and who knows what else. Bye!